Around the Galilee and Jordan Valley region, there are 10 cities. They group together not by political alliance, but rather because of their heavy adaptation to the Greek culture and pagan worshipping. This region is called the Decapolis. In fact, the name the Decapolis means 10 cities in Greek. BethShean was capital city of the Decapolis and was the only one on the west side of the Jordan River. BethShean is located 17 miles south of Sea of Galilee. It is situated in a strategic junction of the Herod, Jezreel, and Jordan valleys. The fertility of the land and the abundance of water led the Jewish sages to say, if the Garden of Eden is in the land of Israel, then its gate is BethShean. A tour of BethShean is like a walking through time. It is one of the most ancient cities in the country. It is a historical gem that unfolds the fascinating story of a rich period full of changes. BethShean was first settled way back around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. The city has had many conquerors through the history, among them the Egyptians some 3,005 years ago. Then a few hundred years later, the Philistines conquered it. The most known event about this place is that it marked the ending of King Saul. The story was recorded in the 1 Samuel chapter 31. It says, the Philistines fought against Israel, and the Israelites ran away from them. Many Israelites were killed on the Mount Gilboa. The Philistines fought hard against Saul and his sons, killing his sons Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. The fighting was heavy around Saul. The archers shot him, and he was badly wounded. He said to the officer who carried his armor, "Pull out your sword and kill me. Then those uncircumcised men will make fun of me and kill me." But Saul's officer refused, because he was afraid. So Saul took his own sword and threw himself on it. When the officer saw that Saul was dead, he threw himself on his own sword, and he died with Saul. So Saul, his 3 sons, and the officer who carried his armor died together that day. The next day, when the Philistines came and take all the valuable things from the dead soldiers, they found Saul and his 3 sons dead on Mount Gilboa. They cut off Saul's head and took off his armor. Then they sent messengers through all the land of the Philistines to tell the news in the temple of their idols and to their people. They put Saul's armor in the temple of Ashtoreth and hung his body on the wall of BethShean. Later, BethShean was part of the kingdoms of David and Solomon. It was remained under Jewish control until 10 tribes in the north kingdom were conquered and exiled by the Assyrians. In 730 BC, King of Assyria burned down the city. BethShean remained largely uninhabited for about 400 years until the conquest of Alexander the Great, around 370 BC. Under Alexander, the city was rebuilt. There were large open-air markets, magnificent public buildings, fountains, and theaters. It was the center of Greek culture in northern Israel. The name was changed to Scythopolis. After Alexander died, his empire was divided into thirds: Rome, Egypt, and Syria. Egypt and Syria constantly fought over the control of BethShean. This argument was finally settled by the Maccabees, who captured the city in 104 BC. Maccabees eradicated all traces of Greek culture, restored the original name BethShean. During the Jewish revolt of 68 AD against the Romans, BethShean was captured by the Romans and the Jewish inhabitants were massacred. Once again, the city was in non-Jewish hands. Romans rebuilt BethShean in 63 BC, and it was again renamed Scythopolis, the name of Scythians. Scythians was actually mentioned by Paul in the book of Colossians when he talked about the new life Jesus gives to people who believed in him. He said, "In the new life, there is no difference between Greeks and Jews, those who are circumcised and those who are not circumcised, or people who are foreigners or Scythians. There is no difference between slaves and free people, but Christ in all believers. And Christ is all that is important." This city continued to grow and prospered in the Roman and Byzantine periods. It was extended over an area of 370 acres. There were many huge buildings, including an amphitheater, a hyperdome, 2 magnificent colonnaded streets, a Roman temple, a decorative fountain building, a large basilica, and carvings, and a mosaic of Roman goddess of good fortune. When the Muslim Arabs conquered the land of Israel in the 7th century, BethShean was neglected. The buildings fell into the state of despair, and most of the population moved away. On January 18, 749 AD, a terrible earthquake hit BethShean. Thousands were killed, and the city was reduced to a pile of rubble.
You can see it toppled right off of the top of that.
Oh my.
And here it is. They did a beautiful thing here. Instead of digging it out right here, they left it there so we can see it as it fell.
When the European Crusaders came in 20th century, BethShean was made into an independent state. However, this statehood was short-lived. In 1263, the Crusaders were driven out of the BethShean, and the city was under the control of the Syrian. Under Syrian, BethShean once again flourished as a fertile agriculture center. For the remainder of its history, BethShean was an Arab village under the Israel War of Independence in 1949. When it was captured by the Israelis, the area was settled by Jewish immigrants from North Africa. Today, the ancient remains of BethShean are a popular tourist site, and it attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors a year.